moved me after maybe a 2-hour conversation with him, one of the first. I said at the end of it, I said, which university have you got your qualification from? And where did you do your master's? Because he spoke with such eloquence. And when he said to me, I've never been to university, I could not believe it. And quite rightly, Sardar Rahman Sahab has pointed out, his fluency of Farsi, Urdu, English, and many more languages was again a testimony of a man who had shown and proved. And there's 3 things about Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khan Marhoom that I will always bow to. The first, he came from such a humble beginning. He was not the son or grandson of any feudal family. He did not belong to a privileged background. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He made a journey himself, and what a journey that is. Secondly, he is somebody, like I said, who had no formal qualification, but could hold stage and court with some of the biggest leaders that we have seen over the last 50 years. And I have read and seen video footage of his visits outside of Kashmir, and what an advocate he was during a number of governments, actually. And thirdly, which I think is testimony to any politician, is when you retire from politics or are no longer in this world, all those political enemies come to the forefront to pay respect and talk of you in such positive language. And that was what is happening with Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khan Sahab. And I say here, and I say clearly, Kashmir has a vacuum. The cause of Kashmir has been affected by the departure of this great man of huge stature. But all we can do today, and we join, is to pray for him, and may Allah give him the highest rank in Jannat. 2 other short points. We come together also, as originally intended, on Kashmir Martyrs' Day, and we will do this Monday in Parliament. And a number of people have made some very valuable points here today on this cause. And both my colleague and sister Naz Shah and I are very clear about this. We are there, and as I'm sure other parliamentarians and colleagues are, is we cannot, even in the British Parliament, what we cannot do is play any box-ticking exercises. We must have serious dialogue, and we must have serious debate. And I know in this Parliament there will be a debate in the House on this much important issue. And self-determination, like we've always said, is not something that the Kashmiris are begging for. It is a birthright that they have along with every other people and nation. And that's something we can never be moved on. But more pressing issues that need attention are around the draconian powers that are being used to commit human rights violations on that soil on a daily basis. And I have asked, and I've been supported by other colleagues, and it is something that I will relentlessly pursue. There must be an inquiry in this Parliament on the draconian Indian Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which has given unlimited powers, been condemned by every United Nations organization, and will continue to be condemned. But until the international community holds it to account, has a proper inquiry, then the brutality, human rights violations, and the killing will continue, the unmarked graves will continue, and that is a situation I will never be a party to, and that's an assurance I want to give here today. Finally, my sister makes, as always, some very good points, and in particular I join her in the call to condemn, as British Muslims, any taking of innocent lives across the world. And we do that. But equally, the caution I put in there is what I am not prepared to do is somehow accept that there are pockets of people secretly condoning or secretly shying away from these things. The majority of Muslims are the first to condemn these things. The parliamentarians, I know, my sister and me, are there on the forefront of these things, condemning them, and we do so very forcefully and very openly. But what we cannot have, and I tell those people that do sometimes make these blanket statements, that what we cannot have is blanket statements sometimes around such issues that sometimes are not the most productive and sometimes make the whole Muslim community somehow under this one umbrella, and I would add caution against that and say that is also very dangerous. Once again, I am very grateful to be invited here today. I, as always, want to assure Raja Najabat Hussain, who is a veteran campaigner on this issue, that he will always have my support in any way, and I know he will always have my sister Naz Shah's support as well. And with that, I'm going to have to leave immediately, but I'm sure you have Naz Shah and Richard Corbett and many other distinguished speakers here today. Thank you very much.
Is to leave a legacy. And I can only, after listening to the tributes for this great leader, I can only aspire. I feel absolutely humbled, I feel absolutely inspired, and I can only aspire, as can many others, to actually leave a legacy such as the first ever freedom fighter of Kashmir. What really strikes is perhaps he might not have been the person who fired the first bullet. He might not have been one of those 13, or one of those 21 Kashmiris, but what he did do is he started a movement, and for that I feel inspired, I feel humbled, and I think, you know, that's something I will take away today, because it's certainly something that I didn't know and I'm new to, and I never had the privilege of meeting this great person. My condolences go out to his friends and families and colleagues. Coming back to the issue of Kashmir Martyr Day, when I got involved, when I learned about Kashmir, it wasn't so long ago, I was more active around the Palestinian issue, and when I learnt about what was happening in Kashmir, more recently, and certainly through Raja Najabat Sahab, who make sure that I'm up to date and kept informed on things, it's incumbent upon me, not just as a parliamentarian but as a human being, to raise the issue of wherever there is inhumanity, wherever there's a humanitarian crisis. When Sharjeel earlier on, we know Richard and I were at the Srebrenica memorial earlier this week, where 8,000 men and boys were killed. And when I read about the 13th of July 1931, you know, what worries me is the inhumane, systematic killing of people. How a person can just stand and kill and massacre people without fear or thought of their families, fear of thought of what psychologically for them. And what's happening everywhere in the world, and no different to what's happened in Tunisia only weeks ago. Ultimately, we are in very difficult times, and what's disheartening is 1931 or in 1995, where we're at today, where we were a few years ago, it doesn't seem to be shifting, and it doesn't seem to be stopping. If anything, we have a rise of people who leave here. What will we do about stopping the hatred spreading? What role do we play sitting here and leaving this building, of actually educating our children, educating those that those that are our future. The measure of a country is in its future. It's not just about us, it's about our next generations and what they will do. And here before us we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to change the history that our children will be telling. I certainly don't want my children to be standing here and talking about more massacres after 2015. So I would urge, like Imran, I will be going back to my children, and they'll get an extra hug from me, simply because I think we're very privileged and we're very blessed to be in a country where we don't have that fear of where we're going to be massacred and where we're going to be lined up in a line and put a bullet through our heads. I think that's it's very poignant. I feel absolutely, I must congratulate Raja Saab, I must congratulate you all for being here and for continuing to raise awareness, because I think it's when we forget that we lose our own humanity and a sense of what we have, and I think it's imperative. So that's my challenge for myself and indeed everybody listening, and I thank you very much for the invitation today to speak. And on that note, I will hand it over to Rajan Jazakallah.
Thank you very much, Naz. We have got friends, brothers and sisters from all over the country. I've got Sister Navida Khan from Preston, Shahnaz Sadiq from Burnley, Dr. Ghulam Abbas from Huddersfield, Councillor Halima Khalid, who has recently got MBE with our family from Huddersfield and Nottingham. Representation from Manchester. 3 sisters came specially, and they were first with our Vice Chairman Amjad Mughal Saab, Shahid Saab. We have got representation from local level, but less representation from locally. So now I would like to request first